Hello friends, I'm Tiffany and welcome back to my channel. I am so excited because today I'm going to be doing a little Q&A with y'all. I asked some people on Instagram and on Facebook for questions just about me or the holidays or anything like that, and y'all came up with some really awesome questions, so I'm going to go ahead and answer those right now. I also do want to mention that this is going to be my last video for Vlogmas. I made the decision to just stop at day 20 and to allow myself to focus on me and focus on the holidays for the rest of the upcoming year. But I had so much fun filming all of these videos and I cannot wait to show y'all what I have in store for next year. So the first question is from one of my really good blog friends. Her name is Darian. She is amazing. If you haven't heard of her, what are you doing? She is on Instagram, but she also has a really awesome blog. We collaborated forever ago, and ever since then, I've just been in love with her content. And she is a new mom, and so she does talk a lot about that. And even though I'm not a mom, I still really enjoy her content. She talks about thrifting a lot, which is one of my favorite subjects. Love to thrift. She is a military spouse. She also just recently moved to Alaska, so that's really cool to keep up with. And she talks a lot about mental health and self-image, self-confidence, and all that good stuff. She is amazing. You should definitely check her out. So Darian asks, what is your favorite holiday memory? So as y'all know from some of my videos from Vlogmas, I have had a very transient life. And so my dad was in the military, my parents got divorced when I was young, they both remarried, and I've just moved around a lot. I worked on a cruise ship, and I also flip-flop between living with my dad and my mom. So my life and my Christmases for sure have been all over the place. So even though this isn't a specific holiday memory, one of my favorite memories from growing up was whenever me and my family moved to South Carolina, and that's where my entire dad's side of the family lives. And we always used to have big Christmases where we got together with all the aunts, uncles, cousins, my grandma, all of those awesome people in my family, and we just had a huge Christmas celebration. And that was something that I never had before moving to Charleston whenever I was in middle school. Since growing up, we lived all over the world, and so I never got to experience having a really big holiday celebration with my entire family. And so when we finally moved to South Carolina, I got to experience that for the first time, and it was so awesome just being surrounded by my entire family. We're talking second, third cousins, babies, everybody. So it was really, really cool. And since I don't live in Charleston anymore, I have gone back for a couple other holiday celebrations, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all that stuff. So it's really awesome whenever I get to re-experience all of those things again. And then the clan just keeps growing since everyone keeps getting married and having babies, and it's really awesome. So the next question is from Amethyst, and she is Ray of Golden Sun on Instagram, and she asks a few good questions, so I'm just going to take them one by one and go from there. So the first question is, what places have you moved to when growing up? So as I mentioned, my dad was in the military, so we moved all over the place growing up. And so all of the places that I lived, I was born in Germany, and after that we moved to Florida, then Japan, Arkansas. My dad retired in Arkansas and we moved to South Carolina. And then whenever I was about to start, or whenever I had started high school, I moved to Louisiana and lived with my mom, and now I currently live in Dayton, Ohio. Have you ever experienced culture shock? So I have not. So as mentioned, the only place that I have lived besides being born in Germany that was overseas was Japan. And since I was so young, I really didn't experience culture shock at all. I obviously was just a young child and I was just absorbing everything around me. And I honestly had no idea that I was living in a new country. I was surrounded by people in the military. We did live in military housing, and I did go to an English-speaking school, so I never really experienced culture shock or anything like that. We did get out into the city and explore and do all sorts of cool stuff in Japan, but I never really had that experience of culture shock just because I was so young and impressionable already, and I didn't really understand that they were different from me, just because of course I look different from everyone, and then living on military base, everybody looks different. And so it's kind of cool that I never really experienced culture shock growing up. And then after we moved away from Japan, I've only lived in America, so I never really had any kind of experience with culture shock. And the last question she asked is, how did you adapt to moving to new places? As I mentioned, growing up, I was just a very impressionable kid, and so like I was just absorbing the world around me, and I really had no idea that it wasn't normal for people to not move from place to place all the time. And so I just thought it was part of my life, and I accepted it, and I loved it. I loved being able to move from one place to another and get to meet new people. I didn't think that it was anything weird until I turned about 15, I think, whenever I moved to Louisiana, and I was surrounded by people who had like lived in one place and grew up in that same place their entire lives. So that was actually weird to me. So moving to new places was definitely not hard for me. The next question comes from Natalie Moran. She has a YouTube channel called Moran Family TV, and I'm going to link all of these below, so definitely check everyone that I'm mentioning, check them out down below. So Natalie asked, how is dating someone in the military, and do you think because you're a military brat, it influenced you to date someone who's in the military? So dating someone in the military is awesome, and I say that because I am absolutely in love with my boyfriend, and I would do anything for him just like he would do anything for me, and I feel very, very lucky that I found that kind of love. And the fact that he's in the military wasn't really a factor for me, because he was a friend of mine, and we were friends first for a couple years, and then we fell in love, and that's just how it happened. So I am grateful for our love, and I'm grateful for our life together, but the fact that he was in the military had no kind of influence on us dating, because growing up I never really dated anyone in the military. Whenever I was in high school, I dated somebody that was going into the military, and we actually ended up breaking up because we were both young and naive, and even though he wanted to stay together, I just didn't see it working for us. And I mean, I was 18, so I was super young, and I still had my whole life ahead of me. I was going to college, and so that just didn't work out. And I did date a couple people in the military before I started dating Kyle, but it had nothing to do with the fact that they were in the military, and everything to do with the fact that there was just a connection there. And I also had a really big group of military friends, so that just kind of happened organically. I never really sought out anybody that was in the military. In fact, whenever I had started dating, I had always said that I don't really want to date anyone in the military, because of the fact that I wanted to have the kind of life where I lived one place and my kids were raised there and they would make lifelong friends, because that's something that I don't really have. I don't have my best friend that I met in kindergarten who I still talk to. I don't have those kinds of friends. A lot of my friends were, oh, we were best friends for 3 years whenever we moved there, and now we talk every once in a while. So that wasn't the kind of life that I wanted for my kids. I wanted to be able to stay in one place. But now that I'm dating someone in the military, I think it's kind of exciting, because whenever we have kids, they can have the same kind of life and experiences that I had growing up. So I think that's really cool. But I will say that having a father in the military was definitely not a factor in me choosing my partner. The next question is from Nessa. She's a Nessa Lynn XX on Instagram, and she actually has two questions that are very different from each other. So the first question is, did you ever want to also join the military? I remember whenever I was super young, we were living in Japan, so I was probably about 6 years old. I told my dad that I wanted to join the military because he was in the military, and I thought it was awesome. I wanted to be just like my dad. And my dad's like, maybe you should consider going to college first. We'll talk about this whenever you're older. So whenever I was younger, I really did want to be in the military just because my dad was my hero and I wanted to be just like him. But as I got older, I never really thought about joining the military. It wasn't something I was interested in at all. It was just a fleeting thought whenever I was about 6 or 7 years old. And Nessa also asked, what does your family think about you doing YouTube or blogging / posting online? Honestly, everybody in my family and all of my friends, they have been really supportive. The posts that really speak to them, they'll share those ones online, whether that be YouTube or blogging. And it's really awesome. It's really awesome to have that support. I think they just understand that it's a part of who I am. And also, since me and Kyle, we live in Ohio, and we're away from our friends and family, and so my blog is kind of a way for his family and my family and our friends to just kind of keep up with what we're doing, especially with all of our travels, and then just some of our everyday things and seeing cute videos and pictures of our dog, just things like that. So they are definitely supportive, and so I am very grateful for that. Nikki from nikki.scott.775 asks, what travel destinations are on your bucket list and why? So I have a ton of different travel destinations on my bucket list. If you watch my 40 before 40 video, I kind of talk a little bit about that, but I'll kind of just briefly discuss it here too. So my number one place that I want to visit is Australia. This has just been a place that I've always wanted to visit. It just seems like a place where everyone's happy and it's warm and it has a little bit of everything: beaches, history, just beautiful buildings, really nice people, and it's just a place that I've always wanted to go. And I just love that it's a country and a continent. And I would also really love to go to New Zealand and just get both of those out in one full swoop, or live there long term. I wouldn't be mad about that either. The Philippines is really high on my bucket list. I am half Filipino, and so I have never been to the Philippines, and I really want to go just to learn about my culture and to meet a whole side of my family that I've never met before. I also just really want to go to every single continent. That's on my bucket list for sure. And I've always really wanted to go to Alaska. I think that it's a really cool place that I just love to visit. And Hawaii, I would like to go. Kyle has a cousin that lives there, and she's the perfect excuse for us to go. But Kyle recently went like a couple years ago whenever I was working on the ship, so I didn't get to go with him, and I'm so bummed about it. So it's definitely on my list. I've also always wanted to go to Greece. I also want to go to all 50 states. I've been to 25 so far, so I just got to get the rest going. And then just a bunch of places in Africa and Europe and Asia. I want to go everywhere. Nikki also asked, what are your hobbies? So I have a lot of hobbies. I love to write. Writing is my creative outlet. It is also how I get all of my feelings out. So I just love writing, and I do have a blog that I will link below for y'all. And writing is just one of my favorite ways to just unwind, whether that's journaling or blogging or creative writing or anything like that. I also love to read. I love reading so much. I haven't really had that much time to read as much as I have in the past. Life has just been really crazy. And so since I don't have time to always read a physical book, I do like to listen to audiobooks. I know there are a lot of readers that have some things against audiobooks, but I actually love them because it gives me the opportunity to experience all the same books that everybody's talking about, but I can do it while I'm doing dishes or taking a shower or on my commute, just living everyday life, and I still get to experience those books even though I don't have time to actually sit there and read the actual book. I also am becoming an old lady, and I love to knit. I think knitting is so fun. I am not really good at it. I just took a class earlier this year with a friend, and I have knit a few scarves, and it's really fun. It's something that I really like to do on road trips. Whenever Kyle's driving, I just like to sit there and knit. Keeps me awake. So those are probably my top 3 hobbies right now, but they're always changing. I also really like painting. I haven't really painted that much since we lived in Ohio, but I used to paint all the time. So similar to questions that I've already answered, Robin from Bird's Tender Nest on Instagram, she asked, what states and countries have you lived in and which ones are still on your bucket list? So I already mentioned all the states and countries I've lived in, and I already mentioned what places are on my bucket list for traveling to, but I think for living, it might be a little bit different. So places that I would really love to live, definitely Australia. I just love Australia. Well, love the idea of Australia. Obviously, I haven't been yet, but I think that living in Australia would be really awesome. I would also really love to live in England or even Germany. In Europe in general. A few years ago, my sister and I actually visited London, and I loved it so much. I love their public transportation system because it's really easy to follow, even though there's so much going on with it. And I say that knowing that on our first day there, we actually got lost and got on the wrong train. But, if I lived there, I would be able to figure it out. And I just loved it there. I really loved being in London, and I think it would be really awesome to live there. And we also visited Rome, and I just loved it so much. Like, I would love to live in Italy. I just think it's a beautiful country. Everyone we met in Italy was super nice, and of course all the food is good and the wine, and it's just gorgeous. Everything about it is just so gorgeous. So those are definitely some places that I would for sure love to live. I also wouldn't mind living in Hawaii because it's warm year round, and that is extremely ideal for me. And as far as like raising a family, I always thought living in Charleston would be awesome, just to be around all of my family that lives there. I always thought that that would be great, and plus Charleston is just a beautiful place, and I loved living there whenever I did. So those are all of the questions. Thank you so much to everybody who asked questions. I had a lot of fun answering these questions and just getting the opportunity to let you guys learn a little bit more about me. If you liked this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!